Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to today's video. I'm going to be going over replays and how to use replays to, play test, to improve, and to get better at the game. I think like effectively viewing and watching over your replays over will make you an overall better player. And I'll show you how I guess I play test, especially on Dueling Book, and how like when I watch over my replays, some of the thought process that I had that I have as I'm like playing through the matches, and essentially like trying to figure out what I could have done better or what I did really well. I think it's really important to look it over and see, because in the moment you don't have a lot of time to like think. So trying to like not get slow play warnings on DB, you kind of like want to play at a really reasonable pace, because in a real tournament you don't get that much time. But the benefit of watching over your replays is that when that same scenario, when the same situation comes up again, you can then figure out what are the most optimal lines and what are the best things that you can do in very similar game states. I think obviously today I'm going to be showcasing Prank Kids with one Mew against Yugioh Invoked. A really tough matchup, and kind of also trying to like make it kind of like broad. I don't think it just applies to like Prank Kids, but any deck going forward, when there's a new balance, when there's a new format, when there's like new cards coming out, right? I feel like this way of playtesting and looking over your replays will dramatically improve you as a player, and also make it so that when you do play like in person, or you do play in like high stakes tournaments, you make the decisions better and faster. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So our first match, we're playing against Yugioh Invoked. My opponent wins the dice roll here, and we see that he opens like pretty nuts. Meltdown, Shadow Fusion, Nadir. They always open the Invocation with the Meltdown, the Ash Blossom. I open Crossout Tactics, Ash, Dropsies, Thunder Dragon Fusion, thinking to myself that if I were to go first, this hand is an instant GG. The cool thing here is that my opponent and I both have Ash Blossoms, but if you cross out my opponent's Ash Blossom, because it doesn't work like Call by the Grave, my Ash Blossom would actually still be live on my opponent's turn. So it's actually better at you cross out Tactics than Call by Tactics, funny enough. If I were to go first, at least, just because I have my own Ash Blossom. But anyways, my opponent is going to start with Magical Meltdown. Here I have a decision to make, right? Either Ash the Meltdown to stop him from getting Alistair, and the reason why you would do that is because you're playing around Hard Drawn Invocation. If you Ash the Alistair, they beat your deck by Hard Drawing Invo, pretty much. So in my head, like at this point, I wanted to try something different. So typically I always hold my Ash for the Alistair, just because there's 6 Alistairs in the deck. Oh, there's 3 other Alistairs you can draw with the Meltdown, and there's only 2 other Invocations you can draw with the Meltdown to make ashing the Alistair normal summon always a little bit better, just because there's technically more Alistairs in the deck that he can just normal summon right now and punish me rather than Invocation. But I decided to go for something a little bit different, and this time like I wanted to test what would happen if I Ash Meltdown and see how that like ultimately plays out. So this is why you see me attempt to Ash the Meltdown here. So as you see right here, I actually got rewarded because he hard drew the Invocation. I mean, it wasn't like really a read, but I did go with my gut feeling, thinking to myself like, man, what if he hard open Invocation, because my hand was really weak to the Mechaba. So let's go. Then he activates Nadir Servant. He sends Apcolone. He's gonna get Maximus. Apcolone effect will then trigger, gets him Schism, and then he's gonna pitch the Invocation. And man, when I saw it, I was like, wow, that was pretty nice to see. If I was him, though, I think I would have maybe considered pitching Shadow Fusion, because you can add it back later when you go Maximus effect, and you get free card advantage. So I wouldn't have sent Invocation there, but we'll take those. He sends, and this is exactly what I mean, right? He sends Construct, right? But if he sent Shadow Fusion, he could have added it back to his hand, so he get free plus. But he just small misplays. I actually sent Rip Roaring Roaster, and I sent Totalies. For people who don't know, Rip Roaring Roaster can actually add back any card in my graveyard when it's sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, because it says in your possession. The extra deck is a part of my possession, which means if they Maximus and I send Rip Roaring Roaster to the graveyard off of Maximus effect, I actually get to add back Ash Blossom, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to use Chainlink 1 Rip Roaring Roaster to add back Ash Blossom, and Chainlink 2 Toad to put Toad back into the extra deck. That's essentially what you guys do against the Maximus deck, by the way, guys. And then my opponents at end phase is going to activate Titaniclad, add Ecclesia, and Ecclesia effects is going to hit Fleur-de-Lis. So he basically has Schism with 1 monster negate. So I draw for turn, Prank Kids Fancy, which is actually really good into this board, because Fansies can actually Foolish Burial any Prank Kid card, and that would actually try to help me like break the board. I'm going to go normal summon. I'm going to go Chainlink 1 Fansies, and I'm going to use Fansies effect And here's kind of like where I misplayed, right? So you're going to see that I end up losing this game. And in retrospect, right, when I look at it, I'm like, could I have done anything differently? And we'll talk about it. So let's go. I go Chainlink 1 Fansies. I'm going to go Chainlink 2 Crossout to negate the Ash Blossom. And then he's going to go Chainlink. So 1, 2, 3. He's going to go Chainlink 4 Schism. The chain resolves backward. So Schism is going to summon first. He technically said it was okay with a thumbs up, but I wasn't going to shark him on it, guys. Like, at the end of the day, I want good playtesting. And I looked at this as like good playtest because I'm assuming my opponent activates this at the right time. So I'm not going to shark my opponent on something like this because this is literally dueling book. It's for DB points. You know, I could care less about that. At the end of the day, I want a good match and I want to get better, right? So I'm not going to shark my opponent on something like this. That was pretty obvious. So he summons the wind there. And what I should have done was I should have used Fansies to foolish the Lamsies and then choose not to summon. That's the cool thing about Prank Kid monsters is that they're actually optional to summon from the deck. So if I were to do that, I wouldn't be window locked. I can then go Tactics, take the window, make Phoenix, pitch Dropsies, pop the Schism, and then activate Thunder Dragon Fusion, and I clear the entire board. And I have Ash Blossom for a Shadow Fusion because I added it back off the Link 4, right? But you'll see that I do a different play, which is I actually summoned off the Dropsies, and that was a huge misplay. Because now I'm going to go activate Tactics, draw 2. But drawing 2 here, like, there's actually not a lot of cards I could have drawn that could have outed this window. So in my head, I think back and I'm like, you know, this play was not correct. It didn't really make sense. What was I trying to, like, I look at my deck list back. What was I trying to draw into with the Tactics? It makes no sense. Tactics was used to draw. I should have used it to take. I should have made Phoenix, pop this, pitch the Dropsy. So I have Water, Fire, and Wind in the graveyard. So Thunder Dragon Fusion is live. I can activate Thunder Dragon Fusion, summon Butler, pass back to him, Butler him on his turn, and then use Thunder Dragon Fusion to search a Nemesis Corridor for the follow-up, and that grabs me, shuffles back to Mew, and I can play. I Ash Blossom his Shadow Fusion, I keep my Butler, I crack his entire board. So, effectively, like, you're going to see that I make the wrong play, I'm going to set Cross out, and then I just lose, right? He draws like big old spell. It didn't really matter. So if I just played my hand right and I played it correctly, he would have top decked a dead card and I would have won. But now you're gonna see that I ended up losing. And I think like what this like teaches, I think people is that like, you know, these games where it looks completely unwinnable are actually more winnable than you think. And looking back at this, now I know that like I have a kind of like a game plan into this matchup of like what I want to do with cards I like draw, you know, and a game plan. So looking back at this replay, I realized that like, okay, in hindsight, try to like hold Tactics to maybe consider taking window. Try to maybe set up some way to get access to Thunder Dragon Fusion. Even if I didn't have Thunder Dragon Fusion, if I had Instant Fusion, for example, if I link off the window, I can Instant Fusion back and then reborn back 2 cards and then keep playing after that. You know, like try to figure out like creative ways to like play the game and like try to like break the board, right? So, you know, like I said, I end up misplaying and I end up losing. And that's pretty much that. So, I think this was a very valuable lesson. The next replay I'm going to be showing you guys is this. So, this is actually going to be a pretty good game. So my opponent here, I'm going to actually fast forward to game 2. If you guys want to watch the rest of the replays, maybe we can do that later. But I won game 1, and we're going to go into game 2. My opponent breaks, so he goes first and he passed back Sumi. So I draw for turn, and look at what I do, right? How many of you guys would actually normal summon an attempt to eat the Ash from the hand? The way I looked at it is, this might seem counterintuitive, but watch what I did. I actually set the Fansies and I passed. A lot of people would be like, "What, Pack? Why would you do that?" And in my head, I was thinking of this. I know my opponent's playing Shadow Invoked. This game 2. If I get Ash Blossomed on my, if I get Ash on my Mew, and then he breaks. So I'm assuming he draw like, for example, like Shadow Fusion with no Shadow monsters. He could go Ash my Link 1, then activate Shadow Fusion. I just immediately lose the game, right? So in my head, I'm like, okay, I need to play to my outs. I need to set this Fansies, and then next turn, normal summon a Prank Kid, then make the Link 2. also fancies as 2,000 defense, so it's really hard for the his deck to out. Even if he top decks Alice or I have the Veiler to counteract that, so he can make Mecha and out the fancies. There's like Squamata, there's like all these other Shaddoll monsters, but they're just not big enough. So fancies most likely survives unless he rips like Nadir Servant. And that was the only card that I couldn't really beat. So he's gonna activate Nadir Servant, send in Tis, and then he's gonna Intis my fancies, and I'm like, sure, that's fine. And then he's gonna summon Maximus and then use Maximus effect. And then he's gonna Tactics me. He's gonna Tactics me, shuffle back one of my card, and I was like, sure. I passed back. The reason why I Veiler this was because Maximus can get him access to a Winda, and like Winda is even a bigger problem than the Ash Blossom at the moment. So in my head, I'm like, there's a couple of cards I can draw that outs the Ash Blossom in his hand, but I can't really out the what do you call it? The Windas easily. Because he shuffled back my field spell, I think to myself, I'm like, oh, he probably has an Ash Blossom to chain block. And now I kind of think back and I'm like, wow, maybe I should have activated the field spell turn 1 just so that it would stay on the board so that I can use it to chain block next turn. So that was another misplay for me, not activating the field spell. But I just didn't want to reveal any card into my hand, so that's why I didn't activate the field spell. Because the way I look at this game state was I already had 2 fancies in hand. If I field spell for a 3rd fancies, then it reveals too much info. I'd rather just like keep my hand as hidden as possible, just set a card and then pass. Anyways, I ripped Pamornsut's place, but I found out quickly that I forgot to shuffle my deck, and which would have been insane. If I had the field spell, he would have had to like twin Twister it, which would have been really uncomfortable for him. But I draw into another fancies and I just set and I pass. Just because I want to get different attributes into my graveyard. He draws Shaddoll Fusion, like I said, right? If I went to the Link 1 play, he would have Ash and Shaddoll Fusion me, and then all of a sudden, he's like able to like make plays, and I would just lose. So I'm like, I just got to play to my outs. I hold the Meow Mew. I don't use it. I have to be patient. And so that's what I decided to do. He sends 2, and I send 2 as well. He's going to use App Clone, I'm going to use Battle Butler, and I'm going to use Rip Roaring Roaster. So Roaster is going to add the Veiler back to my hand, and then Butler is going to summon back the fancies in defense mode for me. Just so that I can build up a nice little wall. If one of these Prank Hits survives, I can normal Prank Hit monster, then make the Link 2. And that is probably going to be my win condition in order to get access to the Pandemonium, and also generate a lot of advantage, and save my Link 1. So, and also plays around Ash Blossom. So those are kind of like the thought process in my head, right? And like, I was actually in a call with Cam at the time, and we were like talking through the plays and all that stuff. And he was like, bro, there's no way he has Ash Blossom. I'm like, he definitely has Ash Blossom. Also, because of the fact that he shuffled back my field spell, kind of also gave it away that he definitely does have an Ash Blossom. Anyways, he's Titanic Class at end phase. I actually tried to Veiler it because I thought it was still main phase 1. Anyways, I drew into Prank His Pranks, which is really good because it basically allows me to attempt for the Link 1 play. But what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna flip some in my Lamsies. So I was actually funny enough, I was actually expecting to get, you know, like when I flipped some in Lamsies, I was expecting to get schismed, but for some reason I didn't, and that's when I knew he had Nibiru in his hand. That's how I read the Nib, by the way. So I read the Nib afterwards because I'm like, wait, hold up. If this guy didn't do anything on my normal summon, then he probably has Nib, so I need to force Nib out. So what I did was I triggered all their effects, and he didn't chain. So I summoned both of them, and I summoned 2 waters. He still did nothing on resolution, so I'm like, okay, I guess I'll make Toad. But then in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, he has Fleur-de-Lis plus Nib, so that's how he's going to beat me. So I'm like, okay, I have to hope he doesn't realize that I'm going to try to make Butler, and then I'm going to Butler his monster so that his Fleur-de-Lis does not resolve to negate. So I add the field spell, I add back another wind. Then I activate the field spell to get Roxy's. So the reason why I attributed early was because I didn't want to get nibbed on the do right away. I wanted to generate advantage and get cards back first. So anyways, I go normal summon Roxy's, make the Link 1, chain block with the field spell, and then I summon the water, make the bird again, use water effect, summon another rock. And then from here, I use the field spell, pitch a green, and then I decide to make Bow Wow Bark right here, then activate Thunder Dragon Fusion. So by doing this, I now get to summon a Butler, and I get to boost all my monsters by 500. Then I'm going to try to enter the battle phase, and he's going to try to nib I mean, she's gonna try to flip elite, and I'm gonna chain Butler to destroy his Dogmatica monsters, just so that Flute Elite will, because you need another Dogmatica monster to control in order to negate a monster on the field. So I basically Raigeki his board before he can Flute Elite me. And then all of a sudden he activates Schism. So in my head I'm like, wait, hold up. He's gonna activate Schism. I could negate it, but if I negate it, then I get Nib. So I'm like, okay, maybe there's an argument to negate this. I can probably negate this and then take it, and it becomes very uncomfortable for him. But then I'm like, I can just let him summon whatever he wants to summon, because it doesn't really matter. Because I felt like it was just bait. So he summons Construct, and then he uses Construct's effect to send Dragon, and Dragon's gonna pop my pranks. I go to battle phase. I attack over the Fleur de Lis. I can't attack over Construct for obvious reasons, because it destroys any monster. I then go into Access Code Talker, and then from here he tries to Veiler the Access Code on res, and so at this point in time, I was like, I shouldn't negate this. He has Nibiru, and he probably has Ash Blossom, because I played around Ash Blossom the entire time. So it's probably Ash, Nib, Veiler. He tried to Veiler the Access Code, which is also a misplay. He should have Veilered the Totally and then Nib. But then, of course, like, because I was in a group chat or a Discord call with other people as we were playing this game, and like I was basically told, nah, screw him. Like, he doesn't have the Nib. There's no way. And in my head, I kind of like went with the play, because I'm like, whatever, YOLO. I guess I'll just YOLO it. If he nibs me, I add back a water. I still have Pandemonium, so I'm still lit. But you'll see right here that I shouldn't have done anything here. Let him Veiler it, and then if he tries to nib, I can just go totally awesome. And that would have been way better for me. You'll see what happens. I negate the Veiler, and he's going to nib me. And then I use Toad to add back water. He's going to Construct, add back the Shadow Fusion. And I set my Pandemonium with Lamzie's Dropsies, which is enough to beat his window on the follow-up. But then what happens is, he twins me at my end phase, and then I pretty much will lose the tempo and lose the game from there. But in hindsight, this game was completely winnable. And I'll be honest, my opponent was misplaying. But, like, the important thing to note is that when your opponent misplays, you want to be able to capitalize and take advantage of that. So, I played, like, I feel like I played really well all the way to the end, until the fact that I basically listened to, I listened to, like, my friends who were on the call, where maybe I should have went with my initial gut feeling. And now, like, when I watched the game back, in hindsight, I realized that was definitely the better play. My opponent misplayed, and I should have capitalized on it and honestly just win the game. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and kind of the explanation, the thought process as I walked through the games, and how I was able to, maybe take something like a learning experience from it, right? So the takeaway from this match specifically is the fact that if I was already playing around Nib, then him Veilering the access code should have been a clear, it should have been pretty obvious that I shouldn't have negated the Veiler, because if I was playing around Nib the entire time, I should have kept going with my gut instead of trying to deviate from that. So that's the thing, right? So if you commit and play around a certain card, and you don't have information that will reveal that card isn't that card until something else happens, then keep playing around it, and then you'll get rewarded. So that's pretty much it for the video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you guys maybe teaches you a little bit more about how do you effectively use your replays to learn from it. Even though I end up losing this game, right? I learn so much about just trusting your gut, going with your instincts, making the best plays. Even when your opponent misplays and gives you a chance to come back, then capitalizing on that, and so forth. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you guys have any thoughts or comments, and let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.